we got bad news, unfortunately. What's up, internet peoples? Matt from Southern Motorworks here. Welcome back to the channel. All right, now today, as y'all can see, we're back at it again with the old Swedish gentleman here. Our 1974 Volvo 164E. She's come a long way, or he's come a long way, I should say. Come a long way since we drug it out of a guy's garage in Panama City Beach, but a little bit more to go on it. She's running pretty good. We're still working on tuning it in, getting misfires to go away and whatnot. It runs a lot better once it warms up, but the problem is we can't hardly warm it up because once it does warm up, it starts overheating. Now, I don't think it's like a head gasket or anything like that. I think it's just the cooling system is old and filled with, you know, calcium deposits and stuff like that. Whenever you open the radiator cap while the engine's running, you can see like white calcium deposits and stuff like that swirling around in there, and then it starts burping and whatnot. You know, the water surges and then it won't flow, and then it'll surge and then it won't flow, and it's just kind of indicative of a bunch of stuff being in the cooling system. So what we're going to be doing on this one is we're going to be putting a new thermostat in it, new thermostat housing gasket, new coolant temperature sensor, so that we can make sure that we're getting proper coolant temperature reading on the dashboard. We're going to be putting a brand new water pump in it. And the radiator, we were going to put a brand new radiator in it, but goodness gracious, it's about pert near impossible to find a radiator for a 74 Volvo around. Even online and stuff, really can't find one. You can find them for 240s and 1800s and stuff like this, but they're not the right size. It's a different radiator, not to mention that this is an automatic, so it has a transmission cooler in the bottom of it. So that being said, what we're going to end up doing is this radiator doesn't leak. There's no leaks in it. It's not actually leaking coolant anywhere. It's just, it needs to be cleaned out tremendously bad. So we're going to pop it loose out of here, drain it all. We're going to fill it up with some CLR. That's household calcium lime and rust remover. We're going to let that set in there for probably like a day or half a day or something like that, and just eat away at all that calcium and stuff like that. And then we're going to rinse it really well. And we'll do the same thing with the block. We'll flush out the block and whatnot real good, and try to get anything that we can out of there. We may even run like a regular, afterwards run like a regular radiator flush, like a pressed on radiator flush or something like that, and that should get any remaining remnants out. After that, we should be good to go, hopefully. If it doesn't, then we'll have to revisit other problems, or we may have to get like a custom aluminum radiator or something done, which that'll be a little bit pricey, so we're trying to avoid that. Yeah, so that's the plan for this video, trying to get the cooling system back up to snuff on the old Swedish gentleman here, so that we can finally start cruising this thing all over the place, because right now if you take it 5 minutes down the road, it starts overheating, and that just ain't gonna cut it. So that's about all there is to it. Let's dive into it. We're just gonna start disassembling everything, get the radiator disassembled, the water pump off the front of the engine, get the thermostat housing pulled, the old thermostat out. We've got new all those parts, like I said, except for the radiator. So yeah, so let's get after it. All right. So first thing we're going to be doing here is, like I said, just getting into the disassembly aspect of it. I might have to grab an extra light to put over here. It's not too bad though. Y'all can see everything pretty good, right? I wonder if that AC's got any charge to it. So we should be able to leave most of this stuff intact on here. Looks like the radiator hose is off. I have to get that wire out of the way. That's the hot wire going down to the starter, which we can get that out of the way once we pull that radiator hose off. This can go ahead and come off there. We'll need to pull the fan. Have to figure out how that comes off there. Got to get the fan shroud off the radiator before we can do that. I'm thinking let's pull the radiator hoses off. We can try to capture as much of this as we can. There's no coolant in this. This is only water. So if we drop anything, it's just water. No biggie. I'd just rather not dump it all on the shop floor. So let me get a drain pan of some kind going up underneath there so that we can try to catch most of the stuff. All right, so while we're gathering up some stuff here, let's go ahead and, almost had a PB blaster here. Try to get a little bit on these hose clamps, so they'll hopefully come off a little bit easier. Can't really get to the bottom one right now, so we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. All right, so we got a couple drain pans up underneath the vehicle here. Just got our big 12-quart drain pan like this, and it's essentially an old litter box. It's never actually used as a litter box, but you know, works really good as a drain pan because they're wide open, so it catches a lot easier. All right, let me grab another light, a flat blade screwdriver. These been setting with a little bit of PB blaster on them for a few minutes. That should help loosen everything up. Get my big flat blade out here. We'll see if we can start busting out these radiator hoses. That came off fairly easy. I love the old hose clamp style instead of those stupid constant pressure clamps. If y'all watched my last video, you would have seen me fighting one of those on our diesel tow rig, German tow. It's giving me all kinds of fits. And this is gonna spill water everywhere, I'm sure. Try to get our drain pans in the most advantageous spot here. There we go. Or not. Well, that's on the top side of the thermostat, so actually looks like there may be a little bit of coolant in there. Kind of a greenish tinge. I don't know if y'all can see that in there. A little bit of a greenish tinge to it right in there. Well, all right then. I know I never put coolant in it. We just ran regular water in it because I had a feeling this was going to happen and we were going to want to swap this all out at some point, so I didn't see no sense in wasting good coolant. Alright, well, that hose ain't in bad shape. We'll definitely be reusing that one. We may throw another hose clamp on there. That one's a little rusty. Let's get this little overflow line off here. That goes over here into our reservoir, which could use a good cleaning, so we'll probably bust that off there and clean it out too. Have y'all ever seen a coolant reservoir that looks like that? I mean, it's like they stuck a 2-liter bottle in there, put a cap on it, called it good. All right, so now we can get that hot wire for the starter out of the way. Well, that could probably use, going down to the alternator, could probably use some attention. Well, one thing at a time, Matt. We'll get ahead of ourselves. Don't want to do that. Whoo, it's a warm one out today. Let's get this fan shroud off there next. Looks like it's going to be 1 and 2. Looks like 10 millimeter bolts on either side. That should be about it. Is it really an 11 millimeter? 11 millimeter. Kind of a little bit of an oddball size there. Oh, battery is almost dead. Be right back. Looks like I forgot to charge my electric ratchet, so those are both dead. Set the bolts right up there on the breather. Huh? All right, those 2 bolts off. That should be it. Should be good enough that we can pull the radiator up out of there now. Got to pull that lower radiator hose off down there, and I think we got to lay down for that. All right, let me see here. Hopefully we can do this and not spill stuff everywhere, but not holding my breath. Oh goodness. That hose clamp is definitely getting replaced. Definitely getting replaced. I don't think I can get to the other one, which it doesn't look as bad, so ain't as worried about it. Got to get me another can of PB blaster though. Yeah, that hose clamp there has seen some stuff. So we'll definitely be replacing that one. I'm gonna go ahead and loosen up both of these hose clamps here. Start kind of breaking the rubber loose away from the neck on the radiator. Let it sit there and do that for a minute. Let them sit there and drain for a minute, and we'll be right back topside. All right, so wait till you all see this here. We're gonna leave this underneath there, but that is all the coolant that came out whenever I drained it just now. Should have been way more than that in there. So what that tells me is that either the thermostat's stuck, closed, or there's a giant clog in it or something, because we topped this off and it would not take any more. It was just overflowing out of the top of the radiator here. So something's definitely clogged up in there, and that's why she was overheating so quick. Just everything's clogged up and it wasn't allowing enough coolant to come through. So let's go ahead and get this radiator pulled. We can start trying to get to the bottom of it. All right, so now that the hoses are loose, we'll get the other one off the block here in a minute. Let's get this radiator out of here next. We gotta figure out what is holding it in there. I think there is like a 13 millimeter bolt on either side. Pretty sure that's it. I think it was a 13 millimeter. Yeah, 13 mil. There's two down. Is that really it? That holds it in there? I do believe so. Let's get it lifted up out of there. We got those two 13 millimeter bolts off, one on either side. So, should just lift out of there. Of course, everything's gonna fight you. Fan shroud's gonna be right in the way. Oh, we got transcooler lines to unhook. I don't know what I'm thinking. Getting ahead of myself. All right, we gotta lay back down. Let me get a drink of water real quick. We'll get those transcooler lines unhooked. All right, so up under here, we got 1 and 2 transcooler lines. Gotta unhook those from the bottom of the radiator real quick, then we can pull it out of there. See what size those are. All right, so let's see here. Is it a 17 millimeter? Yes, indeed, 17 millimeter. That's not too awful bad. All right, we're gonna get these busted out real quick. 17 millimeter on the transcooler lines, and we'll be right back. Oh, goodness gracious. I'll tell you what, it is warm out today. Gotta make sure you stay hydrated. All right, so I think we're finally ready to take this radiator out. We got those transcooler lines unhooked from the bottom. They go back to the transmission like that. One we ended up leaving on the radiator, the other we were able to bust loose and leave it attached to the line going back to the transmission. So we'll just do the best we can here to wiggle it loose, but it's super sketchy, and I ain't got no more PB blaster, and I do not want to bust that loose off the bottom of the radiator. That would be catastrophic. So we're just gonna leave it on there and try to wiggle this out as best we can. So like I said, first time, should just lift up out of there, hopefully. Right in the way. Okay. How can I get more room off this fan shroud? That transmission cooler line is just getting hung up. It's got a 90 that comes off the bottom of the radiator and shoots over, and it is just stuck. And I don't know that I'm going to get this out of here with it attached. All right. Okay, so change of plans. I cannot for the life of me get that fitting off the bottom of the radiator, and I do not want a chance breaking it. So we zip tied the fan shroud up out of the way a little bit. So we're gonna call that good. Hopefully we can wiggle it out of there from now. Well, we might be in luck here. There we go. Good. Nice. for as small as it is, that is a heavy radiator. I do want to work on getting that fitting loosened up or something though. It looks pretty bad. But, oof, the old core support needs a little love too. Alright, so let's get this pushed off to the side. We'll go ahead and put some CLR in it, let it sit here and cook for a while, possibly overnight until we get home from the day job tomorrow, and then see what we got going on, see if it's gonna actually flow a little better now. Let's get it out there in the sun and show y'all what we're dealing with though. You can see what I'm talking about. Alright, so for one, that's what the coolant looks like coming out of it. Not good at all. As you can see under there, got us a little room to work now. Gotta unzip tie that to get it up out of the way, but gotta get that fan off there, get the old water pump off, thermostat. Alright, so this is the old radiator here. That's that fitting that we couldn't get off. As you can see, it's kind of a, I don't like that design. When you're trying to turn this, it's really putting a lot of pressure on that line going into the radiator. But anyways, we'll probably work on getting that loose at some point here. But this is the old rad. As you can see, core support needs a little work there. We'll probably tack that back into place or something. JB weld it, something, I don't know. That side's all right. Yeah, it's just some spot welds or something to hold it in there, so we'll fix that. But I mean, it's not horrible. The fins aren't jacked up. Like I said, it wasn't leaking, which we'll probably clean this and paint it. That's the other side there. Yeah, we'll definitely probably clean it, paint it with some flat black or something like that. That's what it looks like. That's what it looks like on the inside. You can kind of see slimy deposits and stuff. That's going to be iron and calcium and stuff in there. So we're going to fill this up with some CLR and let it sit there for a while. Try to clean some of this stuff out. All right, man, would you look at that thing over there? Full video coming soon. We're still gathering up parts for the old E12 Beamer over there. So once we get all the parts for it, we can bring it around here in the garage, start really bringing her back to life and whatnot after her, I don't know. I think it's somewhere around like a 15-year slumber, something like that. So anyways, so we're just going to be using a household CLR like this. Now, you don't want to leave this in there too awful long because it is kind of, I guess it is acidic. But as long as we, don't leave it in there for a tremendous amount of time, it should be just fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this in there and let it set for a while. We'll pour it in there. We're just going to pour most of it in there, I think. All right. So we are going to top this off with a little bit more here. We didn't use all of it because I want to flush some through the engine block quickly later. But for now, we got most of that jug put in the radiator here, and we're just going to top it off. This isn't coolant. This is just water from an old coolant container. We're going to fill it up until it starts coming out of that other side there, I reckon. Hopefully our radiator cap don't really leak. There we go. Started coming out of the overflow. Leaking out of our radiator cap. That old radiator cap was hanging solid. Well, I'm gonna tell you what, that's crazy. Wow. All right, so that's gonna do it there. We're gonna let that sit there for a while and cook. See what we can come up with as far as cleaning it out. All right, well, while we got that cooking out there in the yard, we can go on ahead and start getting after some of the rest of it in here. Let me get this fan shroud, cut that zip tie we put on it out. We can get that fan shroud out of the way. Cool. What was messing us up partially on the bottom is at the bottom of the fan shroud, there's a little clip that holds it into the edge of the radiator. So, never saw that before. I think there's supposed to be one on the top. So, but anyway, yeah, if you take one of these off, just be aware that's down there. Fan shroud's actually in decent shape for the age of it. Looking at the water pump here and the clutch fan and all that, looks like in order to get the belt off, we need to loosen up the alternator here. Yeah. So So we'll loosen that up real quick. Actually, before we start in on that, let's get this thermostat off here and out of the way. Yeah, let's do that. Push these fuel lines up out of there a little bit. I think it's going to be a 13 mil in there. We're going to need an extension. Smaller than a 13, I guess. Oh, because that's a 14. I grabbed the wrong one. That's a 12. Wait a minute. Where's my 13, dadgummit? Alright, we got the 13 there. Things was out of order on the socket rail. Oh, that came off there easy. A little bit of coolant in there. Hey, you know, one positive thing about all this, while we're under here, we can go ahead and replace all them belts we bought like last year. Yeah. And that thing is in there. It doesn't feel froze up, at least not on that side. I don't think it was froze up, but it is mighty sticky, and that seal is just disintegrating. Well, from the looks of it, we do have green coolant in there, and we do have some corrosion, but past that little initial point there, the block doesn't look, it's really not half bad, to be honest. So the next thing up is going to be, let's loosen up the alternator on its bracket. We'll get it swung out of the way a little bit. That'll loosen up the belt. We could take the fan belt off because it controls the alternator and the water pump and the fan. So we'll get that took off there, and then got to see how this fan comes off. I think it's just center bolt right here in the middle, but yeah, I do believe something tells me it's probably not going to come off all that easy, huh? Yeah, we're gonna have to figure out a way to lock the engine down. All right, so we let this CLR sit in there for a couple hours. We can see some particles in there pretty well. I don't want to leave it sitting in there for too long and have it eat away at anything in the radiator there, so I think we're gonna go on ahead and flush it and see where we're at. So let's get it over by the water hose. We'll get this flushed real quick. So, see if we can try to do this here without really getting too soaked. Try not to get my GoPro wet here. Oh yeah, you can see the particles coming out of there. All kinds of stuff. All right, so we're gonna sit here and flush this for a while, and then we'll take a gander at it once we're finished. All right. So I'm gonna call that good there for the night on it. Turned out pretty darn good, if I do say so myself. So tomorrow when we come home from the day job, we need to remove the water pump. We got the thermostat out, got the stat housing out. We need to remove the water pump, which we got to pull the belt in order to do that. And then we need to find and remove the coolant temperature sensor so we can start replacing all that stuff. So this one here, we'll put a little bit of tack weld or JB weld or something. Well, it's brass, so we can't weld it. So we'll hit it with a little bit of JB weld on the bottom to fix that core support area there. Clean this up, spray it with some flat black paint, call it good to go. But for tomorrow, the project's going to be finishing disassembly, removing all that stuff in there. So y'all stick tight. We'll be back tomorrow after the day job. All right, so it's following day. GoPro battery died last night. It was getting real late. Skeeters were starting up, so we just called it a night there. So what we got left to do is get to work on this, getting the water pump off today. Got to get the alternator loosened up, water pump off, figure out how to get this clutch fan off. So yeah, got a little bit of work to do. So that being said, let's get after it. All right, another warm one out today. Got to make sure we stay hydrated. Okay, so first thing I want to try to do is figure out how to get this clutch fan off here. And we're gonna have to figure something out. We've got a 9/16 in the middle, right there, But obviously we just turn the whole engine if we do that. So that's not gonna do us any good. And if we try to hold on to one of the other bolts, it's just gonna spin the clutch fan on the belt. I have a suspicion. So see if I can get a big old pipe wrench or something on there. Might even be able to use these big old giant oil filter pliers. That's tighter. I want to go with the biggest one possible. So let's try that and see. Hopefully these aren't super tight. Forgot to pick up some PV blaster while we were in town today. So I had to settle for the old WD-40 from the little store down the road here. So we're gonna soak this bolt down in that, and hopefully that does a little something. Ow! I think it busted loose. Either busted loose or the bolt broke. One of the two. Either way, it's gonna come off there. Awesome. Oh, that's interesting. It's got like a little cam to lock into the clutch fan, I reckon. Interesting. Yep, it's coming. It's just a little on the stubborn side. Probably been on there for who knows how long. Alright, cool. Yep, she's just a little stubborn on the bearing there. Right on. Tiniest little fan. Huddersfield. Alright then. Cool. We can always pull those off there later if we need to. I don't know if I would imagine the pulley needs to be swapped to the new water pump, so we'll pull those off there here in a minute. But for right now, let's go on ahead and get this alternator busted loose. Of course, it's not a 9/16. What am I thinking? Are we back to metric now? Huh? Is 13 millimeter what you want? Yep. I just need to loosen it so that it can slide a little. Now, I think that is the other bolt there for the alternator. We're looking at that one right there. I don't know if y'all can really tell, but yeah, that's a big old bolt. That's like a 16 mil or something. Probably bigger than that. Oh, that's a 19. I'll be darned. Wasn't even all that tight. We shouldn't need to take this one completely loose either. Should just be able to get it so that we can move the alternator. Yeah. Here we go. Let me get a pry bar. There it goes. Just got to wiggle that alternator a little bit to get it to move. Alright, so we got the belt off. As you can see, that's free spinning now. So, let's go ahead, start looking at the water pump bolts here, how to get them off front. Let me go grab the new one we got inside. We'll take a look at the bolt holes for that. I think there's only like 3 or 4 bolts on this thing. I'll be right back. Alright, so after looking at the new water pump, there is indeed 3 bolts on here, but we're going to have to, in order to get all 3 of those, we're going to have to remove this pulley. So we are going to have to go ahead and take these Allen head bolts off real quick. Shouldn't be too awful bad. Should be able to run these out by hand here now. Gently pry on this one and just drop stuff down in the bucket of water there. Okay, so that apparently comes off separately. That's kind of interesting little setup. Let's get these bolts out of there, see what we're dealing with. Definitely a little corrosion on here. Alright, so we got all those bolts off. 2 out of the 3 are pretty severely corroded, so we may pick up some more of these while we're in town tomorrow. Don't know if I really trust these too much, but we'll see. There's the bottom hose off. Well, when all else fails, gotta consult the old manual here. Detach the drive belt. Unbolt and remove the water pump by drawing it downward and forward from the cylinder head and block. All right, let's try that. What are we still attached to down here on the bottom somehow? All right, I think I found the culprit here. It looks like there is indeed a bolt holding that pipe. There's a metal pipe that looks like it's sealed into the bottom of this water pump here with an O-ring of some sort. It looks like there's a retaining bolt on that metal pipe, and then the metal pipe is what the lower rad hose attaches to. But it would appear that that bolt there is what's holding it. Let's see now. Oh yeah, that was it. Then we've got one more, tube of some kind attached here. Yep, there we go. It is indeed an O-ring. All right, there we go. One old, entirely way over RTV'd water pump. The bearings are definitely have seen better days. Doesn't look horrible though. I gotta figure out how to get this pipe out of there though. Well, that may be the issue why we were overheating. You see, it should be open like this, and we're not. Yeah. Okay, so obviously that's going to be our issue there. So let's try to dig that out just for. Oh yeah. I don't even know what that is. Goodness gracious. It's like rust and calcium and look at that. Chunks of stuff. So that is likely all down in our engine block too. So we will definitely be doing a radiator flush on this. I'm surprised it doesn't leak out of the doesn't leak out of some freeze plugs or something. If that's that corroded, that's what happens when you run water, just straight water, way too much. What we are going to go ahead and do is pull the coolant temperature sensor off so that we can get that replaced while we're under here. So our coolant temperature sensor is going in here. I can't really get a good camera shot. It is not the same as the coolant temperature sensor that we ordered from Rock Auto, which is a more basic one like this. The one that's under there has two different wire connections on the end instead of just the one blade type like that. But the good news is that's something we can do at a later date. We'll just lose a little bit of coolant, no big deal, whenever we go to swap it. But we can order one of those and do that at a later date. The coolant gauge kind of works. It comes and goes sometimes, but I mean, obviously, you know when a car is running hot, if it's, you know, overheating, smelling hot, you know what I'm saying? So we can always run an aftermarket gauge in there if nothing else. But we'll get online tonight and see if we can find the right sender to be able to put in there, something with two-prong on the back side of it. But that's going to do it for tonight. We got the water pump loose, got everything drying out. Tomorrow we'll get to work cleaning all this stuff, and we can go on ahead and start fitting up the, you know, that metal tube on the back side of the old water pump. This piece right there, we can go on ahead and start fitting that up. And then we can finally, like I said, get all the rest of this cleaned up and get ready to put this new water pump back in. Our radiator's been sitting out there, should be good and dry and clean now. So tomorrow we'll probably hit that with a can of paint. Just go ahead and get that cleaned up and ready to go back in. Like I said, that's going to do it for the night. We're going to go on ahead inside, get some grub, relax for the night. Got a day job in the morning, so we will see y'all in the afternoon when we get home. Y'all stick tight. All right, so it's a new day. We've been out here off camera matching up our water pump bolts there, trying to find a couple replacement ones that ain't so corroded. Found one replacement that worked perfect. It's a 5/16-18. Couldn't find the shorter ones, but we were able to clean those up real good. I think they'll be just fine. Came home from town with a box full of goodies today. Got us more TB blaster finally. Another gasket scraper because I forgot that mine was hanging on the wall over there already. Some brake parts cleaner, some rust reformer for under the core support there. Got another cooling system flush so that we can flush everything out of there, even the CLR and whatnot. Got some black engine enamel for the radiator, and got some blue RTV to go on the back side of the water pump. Just on the back side where this one had red on it, right in there. We got to seal that up. We're going to use blue because that's what you're supposed to use on water stuff. This thing here, we've got to get this pipe off. Get the new pump. So as you can see, new pump here doesn't actually have, which one is it here? Yeah, on the bottom side there. Doesn't have that pipe in it already, obviously. So we got to get that out of the old one and put back in the new one. And what else here? Let me see. Oh, came with a new gasket, obviously, for the backside, and an assortment of all the O-rings that we might need. So that's cool. All right. Okay. Okay. Let's not do that again. See if we give it some taps with the hammer here. Keep going like that. Yep. Caught it. Yeah, looking on the inside, she was definitely, I don't know if y'all can really see that, unfortunately. It is full of crud in there. Look at that in there. Yeah, not good. All right, so now I think we can officially chunk this. So, well, we'll set it under here for right now. We'll chunk it tomorrow. Mañana. All right, so got our pipe here. We're gonna have to try to scrape this old O-ring off because it is solid on there, but we can cut through it with a razor blade and get it off. Try to get a little bit of this corrosion off the other side too. Get that, make sure our bottom radiator hose seals up real well. Let's get a razor blade, flat blade screwdriver, one that we didn't just break, and a wire brush on a drill. I think we're going to call it good there. It's got a pretty decent, I mean, there's definitely some corrosion on it. We'll have to see if we can find this part somewhere online, but anyway, that should be fine. I think we are going to hit it with a little bit of rust reformer though. Let that dry on there to make sure that we stop that corrosion as best we can, you know what I mean? Hopefully it comes off fairly easily. Yeah. Not too awful bad there. Well, that was not horrible. All right, we'll hit that with a wire brush under there real quick. We'll spray it out with some brake parts cleaner in a minute, but there you go. Same thing as the other side. There's a perfect no. Is it going to work just fine? Yes. Take this here, just hit it with the file a little bit, flatten down any of those big high spots even more. Now that is what I'm talking about right there. See, what do I love working on old stuff? Look at that. Metal's a little corroded, hit it with a wire brush, little file, that's going to be perfectly fine. Look at that. Alright, so there we go. One rehabbed piece of 50-year-old Swedish steel. Awesome. Now, before we go in for the night, we'll hit that with some rust reformer, and that'll really shine her up real good. But shoot, that ain't half bad. I'm gonna tell you what. All right, set that off to the side. What's next? All right, so I think the only thing, you got to clean up the new water pump, obviously. I think all that's left to clean up is the engine block, or well, cylinder head and engine block, you know what I mean. Got to get that cleaned up real well. Yeah, that'll about do it, I reckon. For the cleaning part anyway. Alright, so in order to keep some of this stuff out of the engine, or out of the coolant passages, I should say. I'm going to stuff a rag down in here, and hopefully that will help keep some of these particles from getting in there and ending up in the new water pump and all that stuff like that. Like I said, we're going to do a radiator flush, but this should help, you know, keep some of that stuff out of there and whatnot. First thing we're going to do, use the old wire brush here, or wire wheel rather. Drill battery's dying, and I'm sucking my rag up out of there. It's all good. We got it pretty good in there and kept most of the particles out. I have to switch off to a different drill here in a minute, I reckon. All right, that's gonna be good right there. Trying to get this O-ring off this other pipe that we left down here. It's proving rather difficult. All right, so we're back. Had to do a GoPro battery swap there. All right, so we've got that thermostat inlet there on the top of the cylinder head cleaned. We have got, those aren't too bad. The inlet's going into the bottom of the cylinder head. We'll figure out some way to put something up in there, clean them a little bit. We got that tube that comes off the side of the water pump down there cleaned. What we need to do now is go on ahead and clean the engine block piece right here. Get that, you know, pretty well clean. We're gonna need an extra light for that. All right, so we're just gonna scrape along. There's not a whole lot here. It's just a flat surface that RTV is gonna seal against. Have to turn you sideways here a minute. Up underneath there, a little bit of corrosion, but not too awful bad. I think we can handle that with no problem. Cool. I'm gonna try to use just, it's actually for cleaning guns. Try to see if I can stick it down in there. Oh yeah. That worked like a charm. It's like you cleaning out the old bore on the Mauser, you know what I mean? Look at that down in there. Very nice, very nice. Now, I want to see a kind of a cool little trick to get the metal shavings and stuff out of this coolant here. What we're going to do, take our old magnet. We're just going to pass it along by the water. And any particles that we just dropped off in there. Look at that. Yeah, cool. Very cool. That works. All right, so I think we're going to go on ahead and throw the new thermostat down in there with the new sealing ring on it. If I can get it out of here. All right, so we got our new thermostat, and I think this is a 165 degree. I think before it had a 180, but being as we're here down here in Florida, we want this thing to open up a little bit sooner. So we're putting a 165, I believe this is, in it. So that should keep us running a little cooler, hopefully. Then also we have our new sealing ring for it, part number 25565. Yeah, that is going to be a Felpro gasket, so that should be good stuff. Okay, so you know how you know that it's been a long day, it's late, and you're just trying to get done. When you're looking at the thermostat like this and the housing, and you're like setting it on there and going, that's something seems off there. It's because it has a slit in it, and it has to be, you know, woven around the thermostat like so that it seals up against the block, or the cylinder head and the thermostat housing side like that. I mentioned it's late. All right, so that's good. We just need to clean up the stat housing a little bit, and then we'll be good to put it back on. So I'm just gonna use what little battery life we got left on our drill here. We use our wad of steel wool here to clean the inside of it. Now that looks pretty darn clean, if I do say so myself. I think that's going to seal up just fine. Alright, so we got our brand new thermostat there, functioning properly, 165 degrees. Short side goes up into the thermostat like that. Long side goes down into the cylinder head. So I'm going to set that in there, get her centered up pretty well. Alright, so we got our bolts all cleaned up there. This is the one that's got the brackets on it to hold the, not sure what this bracket does, but this one here holds the positive cable for the battery out of the way. That one goes on this side, so we're going to do the other one first. Get these kind of, help it get lined up here. Alright, so there's no torque spec for that apparently. Volvo 164E thermostat housing torque specs. Potential range, some sources suggest a range of 11 to 15 foot-pounds. The red, that's for a red block. I mean, it's just a red block. We'll just take it around 10, 15, somewhere around there. Otherwise known in Matt's world as snug. $14 and $15. Okay, cool. All right. Well, if it leaks, we can always tighten it up a little bit more, but I doubt it's going to. Okay. All right. So I think we're going to call it a night there. It's like, I don't know. It's late. So we're going to call it there. Go inside, get some grub. Still got day job tomorrow morning. Old thermostat housing's been cleaned with the new thermostat in, new gasket and everything. So tomorrow we can start reassembling the water pump down there, get that all reconnected. Everything's clean. We just got to start putting it back together, you know what I'm saying? So, yeah, then we can paint the radiator. We'll go ahead and paint this pipe real quick here tonight before we call it. But that's going to be about it. Whooped for the day, you know what I'm saying? So, all right, we'll see y'all tomorrow after the day job. Y'all hang tight. All right, so it's a new day. We're back out here with the old 164. Today we're going to try to work on getting the water pump mounted up so we can let that RTV, you know, tack up probably overnight, and then we'll cinch it down the rest of the way. We'll have to look up the torque specs in the manual real quick. But we've got everything cleaned. Everything's ready to go back together. We're just going to spray it down with some brake parts cleaner, make sure that surface is nice and spotless. Last night we got the new thermostat put in, cleaned up the thermostat housing, put a new gasket in there and everything. That goes together with just an O-ring. Thankfully, no RTV needed. I'm a big fan of O-rings instead of RTV, if y'all couldn't tell. But so today we're going to finish getting the engine block degreased there, get that nice and clean. We've already scraped everything and got it all nice and clean that way, but we need to degrease it to make sure we get a good adhesion on the back side of the water pump where we do have to use some RTV. And then we've got to fight with some of these O-rings that insert up into the cylinder head. And we got to get that pipe that attaches to the lower rad hose cinched in there. That uses an O-ring also. We're painting that. Yeah, didn't turn out too bad. Not a beauty contest with it. Ain't worried about that. We just wanted to really make sure that we got it coated, because this is a steel pipe. This isn't brass or anything like that. So wanted to make sure that we got it coated well and didn't have a bunch of crud on the outside of it. So it turned out pretty nice. All right, so before we do anything, let's go on ahead and let's try to cinch this into the new water pump using the O-ring that was supplied with the new water pump. All right, so we got our new water pump. This is the gasket set that came with it. As you can see, it's got all the O-rings that we need. Just got to find the right ones that correspond with, you know, what we need. So see, there is, sets up in here like this. Cylinder head goes here. So we got two O-rings that go there. There's another pipe that goes on this side, and then this is the pipe that attaches to the lower rad hose. So I think that's the biggest one. Let's take a look here. That one there. That kind of looks like it. This one here seems to be a little, it goes on, but the smallest one here I think goes to this pipe. All right, so from what I can tell, From the looks of it, this stuff is mostly just held up in there with the pressure from the bolts and stuff. So like there's the O-ring there, you shove it up against the cylinder head and the bolt causes pressure on here, and that's what actually seals the surface. That's going to be a little weird, but I guess we'll see. This one is going to go on that other pipe. We'll probably put a little lube or something on that one, or actually it fits in there pretty good. This one I think is just retained in there, and then you run this bolt down like so, and that's going to retain that up in there. Hopefully that's how it's going to work, I guess. We'll see. Alright, so we're just going to hit this with a little brake parts cleaner here, just to make sure there's nothing on that mating surface there from manufacturing or anything like that. We got the other O-ring that goes in here. We put it on the pipe. I think that's going to be easiest in order to get it on there. Then should be able to just slide the stuff up in there. But let's get the gasket out. We'll put that on the cylinder head first, or on the engine block first. Hit this with a little bit of brake parts cleaner. Make sure it's good and clean. Should be sufficient. Looks pretty good to me. Alright, we're just going to use a little bit of this Ultra Slick here. This is actually like engine assembly lube, but it'll work just fine for getting a little bit of slipperiness on the surface of this O-ring down here. Help it go in a little easier, hopefully. Trying to match it up here so we know we're putting it in the right direction. Alright. We're just going to smear a little bit on here. Smear this on the surface here. This will also help kind of hold it in place so that whenever you're lining things up and getting it put on there, it's not moving around on you so much. Just like that. Now we can go ahead and try to line that up with the bolt holes on here. So now we can take our water pump and do the same thing with it. Just smear a little bit on there. Have one of our bolts ready, the easiest one to get to. Very, very little. You don't want this stuff squeezing out once you go to tighten it down, because you can squeeze it out and it'll break loose and get in the cooling system and stuff. You can block passages with it, gum up the works pretty much. So you don't want to do that. You want a real thin surface of it, just a little tiny bit to help fill in any minor imperfections. Obviously the brand new water pump should be fine as far as imperfections goes, but mostly it's for the old cylinder head or engine block that we're mating up to here. We got a bolt ready. Try to do this in one shot, while you're kind of holding it in place, try to get your second one in there. That'll kind of start to triangulate things a little bit. And as you can see, we did choose the right ones. They are supposed to protrude a little bit there. So, yeah. And if you look real close, you can even see the third hole on this one right there. So, if you're working on one of these, the manual, definitely recommended. Really, if you're working on any old vehicle. We're not going to torque these down 100% right now. I'm just trying to cinch them down a little bit. You just want them kind of snug. Now we get to try to wrestle that pipe into the side of the water pump there. And yeah, indeed, the pressure of the bolt being there is indeed what holds that on there from the looks of it. That O-ring seems to, I mean, we really had to kind of push on it to get it in there. So we'll see how she seats. I reckon if it leaks, we'll have to revisit the situation. But that's snug in there. We're going to let that set overnight. Let's go ahead and get that pipe on there, down on the bottom. So we got our pipe here with hopefully the right O-ring on it. I'm going to use a little bit of our old Ultra Slick here just to help guide it up in there. Just like when you're putting in like injector O-rings or something, you might want to have a little something on there like that just to help guide them up in there so you don't rip the O-rings. All right, I'm going to go in this orientation. We may have the wrong O-ring on there from the looks of it, because we got a ways to go up in there. Yeah, I think this was supposed to be that thinner one. Okay, so we got that swapped out for the thinner O-ring. See if that one goes up in there any easier. Ooh, that one did not seem very snug getting up in there. I don't really like that at all. That one seemed very That one seemed very loose. Alright, so we're going to call it good there. We ended up going to thinner gasket because no matter what I did, I could not shove it far enough upward in order to get it on with that thicker gasket on there. So we went with the thinner one. We'll see what happens. If it leaks, I guess we get to take it all back apart again. So it is what it is. Hopefully these will all seal. If not, you know, we'll figure it out. If we got to jam some RTV in there, we'll call it good. But yeah, for now, we're going to call it good on that. So next thing we need to do, we got to get all these need to get all these old belts off here, right? So let's cut these two belts off. Got to get this stuff ready for these new belts to get attached. Let me make sure I got all three, to be honest, before I do that. All right, so we got Goodyear, Continental, Continental. Obviously these are 3 different sizes, so it should be fairly easy to match things up, I reckon, huh? Alright, that was for the alternator and the water pump. So that was super old too. Yep, that's going to be for the water or the power steering. We'll put PS, which means that big boy there, which I have no idea if it even works, but this is going to be for the AC compressor. We may hook that on there, see what happens. All right, before we can even worry about putting the belts on there, we got to bust loose the bracket here on the power steering pump. The swing bracket on the bottom. Oh, the swing bracket's on the bottom. Okay, so we got to we'll have to get a wrench in there, I reckon, behind the pulley. Get a wrench in there behind the pulley, loosen up the top bolt so she swings. Try the 9/16 here. 9/16 it is. Those weren't bad. Okay, so the screw under there that is on the bracket lets the power steering pump swivel back and forth like this to tighten and loosen the belt is about wore slap out, and I didn't want a chance of stripping it off completely, so we just took the whole bracket loose from over here, so that'll work perfect. All right, I think that is everything. Tomorrow we just need to torque the water pump bolts to spec, put the belts on, drop the radiator back in here, be good to go. All right, that's going to do it for tonight. Got home from the day job late, and don't have a ton of time out here tonight because it's anime movie night with the family. So we're going to go on inside, hang out, eat some good food, and we'll be back tomorrow. We got to paint the radiator real quick. We were going to do that tonight and let it dry overnight, but it poured down rain. It was outside, so that thing's soaking wet still. So we'll hit that tomorrow real quick in the morning before we start with the rest of the stuff. And while that's drying, we can button up all the rest of this and hopefully be able to drive this thing tomorrow. So y'all stick tight. We'll be right back. All right, so it's the next day. I think we should be able to button everything up today, hopefully. First thing we're going to do before we get started putting the belts and all that back on and finally torquing the water pump down 100%. Before we move forward with anything else, we're going to go on ahead and get the radiator cleaned up and painted so that can dry while we're doing the rest of this. So let's take that outside real quick, get it scuffed up, throw some paint on it. All right, so first thing we're going to be doing here is just kind of cleaning this up a little bit. As you can see, we've got a little bit of, you know, some kind of corrosion, you know, stuff like that in there. So we're just going to start trying to clean this up a little bit, just using a soft bristle plastic brush here. We don't want to use anything too aggressive that'll bust through anything, you know what I mean? We're just going to get in between these fins as best we can. Try to clean her up a little bit. All right, so as y'all can see, we got that pretty well clean there. You see a lot of the original brass poking through there. All right, not perfect, but it's gonna look a heck of a lot better than it did. All right, let's get it painted. All right, so we're just gonna be using our engine enamel here, gloss black. Same thing we used on that coolant pipe in there. All right, so we got us a little bit of JB Weld here we're mixing up. We're gonna go on ahead and stick that on there before we paint it, so we ain't even gotta worry about it after we paint it. We're just gonna stick this on here. I think what we're going to do is turn it on its side. Get a little bit of weight on that there to help force it down into there a little better. All right, we're gonna leave that set out there, let it get a little tacky, then we'll do the painting. All right, so should be all dried up now. It's been sitting out here in the sun. We're gonna try to go on ahead and get this busted out real quick. Hot as all get out here in the sun. All right, and while that's setting up outside there and getting, you know, dried up in the sun there, we're gonna go on ahead and finish torquing down the bolts on the water pump here real quick and the lower rad hose. And so all we're gonna do is just take these two tight and then give them a little snug. That's all you need. That should be plenty tight enough. I guess we'll see when it's all running, huh? All right, let's get that pulley back on there for the water pump, I reckon. All right, so one thing we are gonna do before we go any further is we want to hit this down here with a vacuum, get some of this old rust out of here, and then we're gonna spray a bunch of rust reformer in there, try to, you know, stave it off a little bit. All right, y'all can see what we were dealing with under there. All that rust up underneath there. So now we're going to coat all of that in rust reformer, try to stop that as best we can. All right, so we're just using the old Rust-Oleum rust reformer here. Basically, we are just coating everything under here in this, putting it on as thick as I can get it. All right, so you can see everything's coated pretty darn good there, and a thick layer of that rust reformer. So now while that's drying on the inside here, we're gonna go out there and hit the other side of the radiator real quick with our engine enamel. All right, so we'll let that dry. We're going in here, and while that's drying on its final coat, I'm going ahead and start putting some of these belts on. All right, so the first belt that's got to go on is the alternator belt. That's the third pulley back, and then it goes to the, I believe, power steering pump, and then this third slot here we can use for the AC compressor. Yeah. All right, so let's start out by power steering pump. I've kind of had a little bit of a hog brain moment there. We need to put the pulley back on. So, you know, the thought crossed my mind of cleaning all this up, painting everything, but in all honesty, it would just stick out like a sore thumb. Eventually, we'll dress all this up and we'll do it the entire thing instead of just little pieces of it. So for now, we're just gonna put it back on there. So we're gonna go pulley first, then this piece on there. Then you gotta line up all the holes. Which may or may not be an issue. Okay. All right. Okay, so that's that pulley back on. Alternator and power steering pump on. That's this one here. All right. Okay, now we can just rotate our alternator that way using a pry bar. Wait. Got pretty good tension on that belt there. All right, that's better. Okay, let's try putting it on the crank pulley first. And then see if we can get it on the power steering pump. Goodness gracious, that thing was a fight. That power steering pump down there fought us big time. but we finally got it on there. Had to have the boy come out and give me a hand with an extra set of hands. We got it on there, belt's nice and tight. All right, so now we're going to move on to the AC compressor belt. I have no idea if this is actually going to do anything or not. This may be completely a fool's errand, you know what I mean? But so for this belt here, I ordered a Continental. I ordered all 3 belts as Continentals. This one is the same part number, 17511, as the Continental, but this one came in as a Goodyear Gator back, the quiet belt. NASCAR performance though, so you know, it's good stuff. It's like a sort of belt that Dale Earnhardt used, you know what I mean? Yeah. All right, so that's gonna swing down here. It's gonna go over the crank first, then on the front half of the AC compressor. All right, just like that, and then this will swing out. And we'll get it tightened down, just like that. Should be, I do believe. All right, so we actually just cut the head of the bolt down a little bit because it's actually a lock washer on there. So obviously it needs the spring tension. So what I didn't want to do was put something else on there and have it not have the tension and wiggle loose, you know what I mean? So let's see how much room that got us. Yeah, again, that's probably just enough. Just enough. It should just clear that belt. All right, we'll see what happens. Who knows? Maybe we'll get like crazy lucky and it actually has air conditioning. All right, so there's all our brand new belts and everything on there. Let's get the fan put on real quick. Okay, that's gonna be this bolt here. Might have to give her a couple taps with the hammer lightly. There we go. Get this spun to where it lines up with the key on the snout of the water pump there. Okay, that should be plenty tight enough. That's all set. All right, so that's all in there. We need to do a battery swap on the GoPro here real quick, and then we'll be right back. We can drop this radiator back in there. All right, swap the battery out. We got this all good to go. We actually had to flip this around. If y'all couldn't tell, there's probably some Volvo expert guy in Sweden watching this video going, Matt, you got the friggin' fan on the wrong direction. Well, we noticed it. I caught it. But I'll tell you what, it does not, I didn't really notice that before, but not a lot of clearance between it and the AC compressor there. So, kind of interesting. All right, let's get the fan shroud on there next. Yeah. All right, so fan shroud going on first. All right. Freshly painted rad. Looks pretty rad. Ha ha ha. See what I did there? Gotta do this without scratching the heck out of it. Okay, needed something to set it on and readjust my hands. That needs to stay up out of the way, but you know it's not going to. You know it's going to get caught on everything going down. Like it's already doing. Maybe if we go in on this side. Nope, that's not going to work. Okay, let me go pop that fitting off while we got it out. Should be easier. Okay, now that we got that line popped off there, it should be significantly easier here, hopefully. Yep, it does. Let's unscrew that. That should be everything out of the way now. But now, everything should definitely be out of the way to be able to get this down in there. Perfect. Yep, as far down in there as she goes. All right. If that's as far down in there as she goes, Let's get our rad bolts in that go on either side. Those were the bigger ones, I believe. I really put this in there upside down. I did too. Okay, so now we get to try to see if there's enough spare room in here to spin this thing, which is going to be fun. One other thing I did want to do is replace this hose, which we're going to have to take that coolant reservoir out in order to do it. So I think I need a 13 again, or actually probably 1/2 inch, because the hose that's underneath of it has got a big split in it. So instead of acting as an expansion tank like it should be, it is just blowing steam out everywhere. Boy, stop that. Good thing we had that tank under there, huh? Yeah, see, there's that big split that I was telling you about. Letting all the coolant out. Let me go and we're gonna hose this out, clean it out as best we can, and we'll be right back. All right, so we got that pretty well clean there. Oop, dripping out a little bit there. Sorry about that. All right, so we got that pretty well clean. As y'all can see, we've got all the deposits. There's a bunch of like calcium and stuff like that down in the bottom of it, or what I assume was calcium. I think this vehicle had, yeah, regular water ran in it for a long time. Now, that being said, when we get all this put back together, I am going to be filling it up with just regular water to start out with until I make sure there's no leaks, and then I'll drain that out and we'll put actual coolant in it. But I don't want to fill this up with a bunch of good coolant and have it all just leak out all over the ground. That's just a waste. So this line that I have over here should work. Well, that's going to be mighty tight. Or if I could reuse that line and just cut the bad part off if there's enough slack on it. We'll just cut the end of that off there. We should have enough slack on it. Okay. I mean, the good thing is it's just the expansion tank. It's not, you know, it's not like a regular radiator line. It's got a ton of pressure on it. But I think it'll be just fine, especially for the night. All right, hose is on there. Should be fine. All right, so we gotta remember to fill that up with a little bit of something. Let's go ahead and get the radiator hoses on there now. We'll do the top one real quick because it's right there. All right, so on there like that. It goes on there like that. The lower rad hose is a little crunchy. I think we're gonna go with it for right now, but we're gonna swap this out at our earliest convenience. All right, so we actually ended up swapping out the hose clamps on those. They were super rusty. This hose is not in that great a shape neither, but it is what it is. We'll replace this as soon as we can, but for right now it should be fine. All right, we're gonna have to go up under the bottom, unfortunately, to do this one, so let's go down there real quick. All right, so the only thing we got left here is to reattach the transmission cooler lines. Okay, that should be plenty tight enough. That should be plenty tight enough. Okay. All right, so trying to do our final checks here. We got both the transmission lines back on, tight on either end. We got all of our belts in place. We torqued down the water pump bolts, the bracket bolts, alternators tight, power steering's tight, AC compressor's tight, fans back on and tight, fan shrouds on, radiators on. That's all tight. Top radiator hose is on, bottom radiator hose is on. I think that's about all she wrote. All right, let's throw some water in there, just start checking for leaks. All right, again, like I said, we're just putting some water in here for right now, so we can make sure this isn't going to leak. And then we can put, I really don't want to spill any because that'll, you know, not let me know if something's leaking because there'll be water on the ground already. All right, enter the next plan. Old water bottle. That'll work. All right, we go refill this, then we'll check for leaks. Should be fine. All right, so I think we've got plenty of water in the system here. So as long as we get everything out of the way, which it does look like we do, let's try to fire it up, check for leaks. All right, well, we got bad news, unfortunately. Let's see if I can get y'all in there good enough to show you here. That heater pipe that goes around the backside of the block, right in that area, it is leaking. Those O-rings we were worried about, and the one down there is doing the same thing underneath the vehicle. So unfortunately, we've got a leak coming out of that heater pipe. It goes around the back side of the block, and the metal pipe that goes in the lower half of the water pump that supplies, that's where the lower rad hose connects to. It's got a slight little pinhole leak at both of those. I know those O-rings looked a little small. They're the only ones that came in the kit. For whatever reason, they, I don't know if the original water pump was slightly different or something like that. I don't know. We'll have to see if there's like an O-ring upgrade or anything like that that we can do, try to solve that problem. But unfortunately, we're gonna have to take this whole thing back apart again, take that water pump back off, and try to get those two pipes to seal up better, or put a different maybe we can leave the water pump in place and find a different set of O-rings or something like that to go on there, something that'll really get them in there. If nothing else, we'll slather the whole thing in some sort of sealant or something like that and see if we can get it to seal up better that way. It doesn't seem to be leaking. I don't see any leaks around the water pump area itself, where it seals against the block of the engine. And we didn't see any leaks around the cylinder head area where the two O-rings go on top. Like I said, we may take the whole thing back off again and put the thicker O-rings on the top there just to make sure. They weren't super tight when we put them on, you know what I mean? I've got a whole roll of gasket material. We can just cut out our own gasket, but we'll save you all the pain of watching us do that all over again because it's kind of a tedious process. So we'll do that off camera. We'll upload a second part to this video, hopefully that ends in success instead of failure like this. But you know, that's just the reality working on old cars like this sometimes. You know, that's just the way she goes. You know, sometimes she goes and sometimes she don't. You know why? Because that's just the way she goes. All right. So unfortunately, like I said, we're ending this one on a little bit of a fail, but we did get a lot of stuff cleaned, got the coolant system cleaned out pretty darn well, I do believe. We just got a couple little leaks we got to chase down. So we'll do that off camera. We'll have a part 2 to this video, and that one will probably consist of just us showing y'all that it's not leaking, and then we'll probably take her for a cruise. We'll go down by the coast or something like that, take her for a drive. Should be good to go by then. So y'all look forward to that upcoming video. Then hopefully when we get this thing completely drivable, this is really the last aspect of it to be able to make it drivable, is getting the cooling system good to go. So y'all make sure you keep an eye out for that on the channel. And if you enjoy this sort of content, don't forget to like and subscribe so y'all can get alerts whenever we post stuff like us cruising the old Volvo down by the coast or something like that. So anyway, I appreciate y'all watching, hanging out with us, and watching us attempt to fix the cooling system on this 50-year-old Volvo here. And hopefully we'll have that follow-up video coming real soon within the next couple weeks on our regular posting. We can get this thing up and going and drive it somewhere. So, all right, I appreciate y'all. I'll catch y'all on the next one, all right? Y'all have a good one out there.